The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
For years, would say things like, "Oh, Scott Schultz, one-man show, only makes 500 cases of wine." Whenever somebody wrote that, it may have been true in 2011. But it hasn't been true since then, and it gets regurgitated. And it's so unfair to Jenny that she doesn't get, because she deserves pretty much all the credit, to be honest.
So the only thing we are missing is a pour.
What do you think? Trousseau Gris or Aligote? What should we start with?
Either or. Trousseau Gris does have a touch of skin contact, but so that's like lighter, cleaner.
Yeah.
You understand? Brian's like this right now. He's like, yeah.
You have no idea. I have had every single one of his whites.
What are we going to open? What are we going to open first?
Really?
Anything that was in Bottle Barn, I grabbed every time I went there.
I would have opened something else first. But what are we going to open first?
That girl in the fig.
Oh, no. That was a long time ago. What?
Shots fired early on. Shots fired.
Are you ready?
We make our own varieties.
Could have been at Fairmont, too.
There you go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Winemakers. I'm John Myers with the full crew today. Brian Casey, Bart Hansen, Sam Couturi, and Scott Schultz, master of all things wine and owner and winemaker at Jolie-Laide.
Co-winemaker.
Co-winemaker.
Yes, please.
That's a Steve Martin reference, right? I don't want much. I just want to be master of all beans, time, space, and dimension.
That's a good thing.
Scott Schultz, master of wine, master of wine
Like
and all beans.
Benevolent dictator.
I always enjoy hearing
an opening, man.
It always makes you thirsty
Perfect.
when I'm listening to you guys.
That's the idea.
Excellent.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Don't listen to it on the way to work. Listen to it on the way home.
So Brian's all excited.
Of course.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I was excited when I heard you were coming to Sonoma. I was like, oh, cool. I'll be closer to the source.
Yeah, and we've tried to come a few times, and then apparently, I think everyone got COVID at one point. I think you guys were all sharing joints and passed it around.
This is true.
It might not have been.
That checks out.
Not all of us were invited that day.
It was
but-
the cheese. I don't
It was the cheese. Got it.
Right.
Still going around and around and around.
Around and around and around.
Every couple of weeks, somebody's got something. So.
Well, I'm glad to be here now.
Cheers.
Glad it worked out fine.
Cheers.
Pleasure.
So what's your biggest impression on the difference between, hanging out, working in Sebastopol and hanging out, working in Sonoma?
Oh man, so we've moved around a lot, and I realize we're going to get into the nitty gritty, but we were in Sebastopol for years, Forestville first, Sebastopol for years, started to work on a thing in Santa Rosa, unfortunately lost that in the fires in 20. Was in Healdsburg the last 2 years, and then now just moved to
Wait, you
Sonoma.
lost it in the fires in 20 in Santa Rosa?
Santa Rosa.
In the last fire.
Yep.
When it came over the hill.
So our really good friend, whom I'm sure you all know, Jamie Motley, unfortunately she lost all of her 20 vintage in that same. So we had moved all her barrels into one portion of the winery that we're working on that was temperature controlled.
Where was it?
Up Los Alamos Road. Do you remember Adler Fells?
Yeah.
Is that just behind Steve Law at McLaren?
Some really good friends of ours bought it.
Sort of north, a little north of there. More
and
towards
we're
Santa
making
Rosa.
some wine up there, and so we turned the bunker into a winery. It's like a 5,000 square foot winery.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like 3 press loads in, fires came through, and so the bunker, because it is a concrete bunker, is still there. The fire went right over it.
Right. Ooh.
So all of our 19s were in the bunker, totally fine.
I wish you
just the stuff on the crush pad, basically.
Yeah, in the lower house. I mean, I could show you pictures, but we won't.
I wish you listeners could see Brian.
Exactly. We don't want to go back on that.
And talk about
So we've moved around a
starting
lot.
in the middle of the story,
Where
classically.
So,
Yeah.
so let's.
Jolie-Laide.
So you grew up where?
I'm from Chicago.
Hey.
All right, great. Hey.
Actually, I've heard that you lived in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I caught that on one of the episodes.
No, we were downtown.
Long-time listener, first-time guest.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Cool.
I listened.
So where were you in Chicago?
Most recently was Bucktown Wicker Park for the last 10 years before leaving.
How cool is that place?
Love it.
Double door. Saw the Stones at the Double Door.
Oh, wow.
God,
I remember that.
what a show. What a bar.
Yeah, I miss that neighborhood.
The Stone and like a bar in Chicago.
Yeah.
Literally, small venue.
They closed
Right
it
on the
off.
corner.
What year?
That had to be like
maybe 05, 06.
Oh, shit.
Something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah, and a buddy of mine ran a guitar store right around the corner from the bar. And of course, everybody congregated there, and that's where I heard about it. And was like, go now.
Nice.
Get your ticket. And I think there might have been 300 people for the show. It is recorded. You can get it on YouTube.
Yeah.
So grew up in Chicago, and what did you?
he's good, keeps us on track.
Yeah, it's
So all right,
Someone-
here I'll do.
That's his job.
Yeah, exactly. I'll kind of movie trailer version it for you. Born and raised in Chicago. My father moved to Vegas. I went to high school in Vegas.
What high school?
Cimarron Memorial. Do you actually know Vegas?
I know Vegas high schools for a very bizarre reason. If you want to, I can go on.
This sounds dangerous. We're going down
when,
a road.
When I was in college in Reno, I would fly to Vegas and work at when they had the NASCAR, like the big NASCAR race at the race, and at the raceway, and I was like an usher essentially, but we had teams of volunteers from like groups at the different high schools would show up, and you'd have 30 high school kids that you'd put in yellow vests that said ushers, and you'd spread them out through the crowd, and then you had all these adults who were running around like making sure that, and then at some point they just all got replaced by security guards by about 20% through the race. But I had there was like different high schools, so I know all the high schools, Cimarron, and
So yeah, I was on the west side.
Okay.
And it's funny. It's the one and only time I saw the Grateful Dead. We'll talk about it later. Was in Las Vegas.
those were some.
I'm not.
Those were some classic. Those were some epic shows,
Yeah.
supposedly. Yeah.
So my, I won't go into my torrid past, but I used to get into a shit ton of trouble. It was just all my nature, my whole
That's
life.
that's what we want to hear.
Yeah, no, and that into it, that'll be a whole other episode. But
a different podcast.
so
show.
I had a roommate. He was cooking at a restaurant. I wanted to get into restaurants. I started cooking literally at an Olive Garden around the corner. The same roommate took a busboy job at this Italian restaurant. He'd come home and be like, I made $40 cash today. I'm like, you made $4 cash? I want to make $4 cash. And so I started being a busboy, and then switched to working at Spago and in Caesar's Palace, and realized Vegas was probably not the right place for a guy with a personality like mine. So I went back to Chicago. At the time, Spago was still there. So I started. Short version is I started working in restaurants just to make money.
Yeah.
Pay for school, all that kind of stuff. So I went to school for several different things. But I always just genuinely loved the restaurant part of it, and stayed in restaurants. And it occurs to you the nicer restaurant you work at, the more money you work at, and there's a lot of wine. So I was exposed to wine and just kind of stayed with that. Fast forward, that eventually brought me out to California. So I was working for the Keller Group. So a girl and I moved to California. She was at French Laundry. I was at Bouchon. I was the wine director. But when I got here, naively, I thought winemakers live in Europe and they live in France or whatever. And I got here and met all these people, and I was like, oh, this sounds so cool. I want to check that out.
Can I stop you?
Yeah, of course, go.
Because you somehow skipped from being a busboy at Spago to the wine director at Bouchon,
Right.
And I feel like something happened in there that
there was-
like, where did the wine piece of that?
That's all pertinent information. So I realized
It was Olive Garden, Sam. Olive Garden.
I didn't even
I was a busboy.
I didn't even smoke weed.
and there was
Got to have something to
the special
wash down all that
Sterling
bread.
that they sold by the glass. Just did it for me.
Right.
And from then on, I wanted to make Trousseau green.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's not where the inspiration came from. So my buddies and I, we realized we weren't even old enough to buy booze yet, but we realized that you can buy a home beer making kit at any age. And so we started making beer in our apartment. We got super into beer. That was like where the geekdom started.
Okay.
And back then, there's an infinite amount. It's a labyrinthal thing itself. But so we got really into beer. We started working in these restaurants. And there's a funny circuitous part to this where at Spago, my buddy and I, the other busboy kid and I, it was my roommate at the time, we wanted to sit on one of the wine classes. And he's like, all right, yeah, whatever, kid. Like, you're 18 years old. Like, don't taste it, quote unquote. Sit in the back, like, keep your head down. And so we listened to this class, and it was Ken Fredrickson was the wine director. And we was talking about Riesling. And it was the first time I'd ever heard someone do wet river rocks and this. And I was like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? and it just became fascinated with it. And so all of the restaurants I worked at, we always had wine. We had to take wine classes. I took wine classes outside of that, read a lot about it. I did every single position in restaurants, like busboy, line cook, go down in flames in the kitchen. Just like I said, genuinely loved the restaurants. And I can, unfortunately, every restaurant that I worked at is closed, and I don't think that's a direct correlation to me. But so like one from Spago to, I worked at MK, I worked at Spring, I worked at True, I worked at this place called Lalande that is not there anymore. And then went to Europe with a girl to afford Europe. I was a salaried line cook at this restaurant. 6 days a week, your station was your station. Like, you literally are not allowed to call in. To afford that, I went back to Vegas, where I could make a lot of money really quickly. That's when I started working at Bouchon in Vegas. Left for Europe. They kept my job open. I was like, shit, I'm going to come back from Europe broke. So, yeah, sure. Went back to Vegas for a little bit, lived there for a short while, and then we kind of got recruited to go to Yountville. And so I thought I was going to the French Laundry. They put me in Bouchon. They put, her name is Brie, put her at French Laundry. And then shortly thereafter, she went to go work at Harlan. I pivoted and went to go work for Realm. So I met Juan Mercado. And I was trying to chase a couple people down. But a lot of these winemakers, as you all know, like whether it was Andy Erickson or, they have like 30 clients. Right. And trying to trail them for harvest. And Juan was so gracious. He's like, yeah, show up. Come do a harvest.
I've been doing this long enough that the way you got into wine business typically was that you went to Davis or you went to Fresno or, there wasn't a lot of white guys that were coming out in the 80s that were coming out of the restaurant business or coming out of distribution. Maybe they'd work a harvest so that way they could say that they had experience when they went working for a distributor or a restaurant. But I think it's awesome how many people have come out of the restaurant business and fallen in love with winemaking so much that you would invest the rest of your life into it, and you're living dollars. So kudos to you.
There's a lot of ways to get here, whether you're a doctor or a lawyer, or these days even like an athlete or a musician who has too much money and they think wine is fancy and they want to be in the space and they hire.
You came out and got dirty,
or it's you're born into it. I'm not picking on anyone, or but or you're like me and you could just kind of weasel your way in and. Yeah. Put your head down, work hard, and hopefully nobody comes up behind you and taps you on the shoulder.
No, it sounds like Patrick Capiello, right? Where he was like working in restaurants, got totally intrigued and fell in love with wine, and then came out here and decided to make a little stop in Sebastopol.
I heard he's a great friend, and we shared the same cellar for a while when he was getting started.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
Same like me, Bart.
Yeah, I mean, it is like a lifestyle whiplash from the suit and tie on the floor of the the Keller restaurant to digging out tanks and cleaning the press,
or even more differently,
and waking up early and going to bed early, the whole thing,
or being tied to a station, as you said, 6 days a week. You can't call in sick. To actually getting to the point where you're like, no, I don't have to go to the winery today. The wines would be better enough just left alone, right? Like, I know that I did my job, walk away from them.
It translates in the fact, like, I did both front and back of the house. Obviously, back of the house often makes a deplorable amount of money. And so I worked more front of the house, and just personality-wise, I did well.
Figure that out quick.
Exactly. But I truly, I loved being in the kitchen, and so that's the part that translates. It's sure, maybe it's not as hot and sharp, but that energy, those 16 hours of harvest and just growing, that part I like. And it just kind of suits my ADHD nature, I guess.
My father often derisively always just says that, winemakers are chefs who only cook one time a year. But I mean, that is it is that same process. It's the tickets are coming in, the grapes are coming in, you gotta turn it into something and get it out into the tank before the patrons start rioting.
I can do a 16-hour shift on a restaurant floor or in the cellar. But if you fucking put me in a cubicle, I melt.
Yes.
And all of the people that I work with, the whole team, and I'll mention all of them because they're great. will all confess that I am fucking horrible at sitting still and being on like email.
Data entry is not your forte, huh?
No, not good at it. Thankfully, like all of us together, like we all bring different parts, and we'll talk about Jenny, but she is literally the one that keeps it all together.
It's awesome.
Did you ask why they sent you to Bouchon instead of French Laundry?
I was actually peeved at the time,
right?
Because I was interviewing with this guy Nicola Finucchi, and he was I think he was the GM at the time. It's kind of a weird story, and I don't know, I might be speaking out of turn, but at the time, Thomas and Laura, so Laura was kind of the renowned front of house, they had broken up, if you will, and so they wanted a replacement, so they put Bree at the French Laundry. She was the concierge there, and they put me, it's funny, I was just texting with him. Paul Roberts was the wine director for the whole group, all of them, per se, all of it, and I was told that I was going to be the assistant beverage director under Jared Heber at the time from Grand Place, only to find out he was actually interviewing elsewhere. So they were kind of just like getting me in the door.
Right.
Like, not because I was so knowledgeable that I was the right guy. It was they knew if they put me there that I would do the work.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of being set up for
And it must have been
success or failure, whichever one it was.
Must have been a good time.
It was great, actually. Yeah, I really
Nice
enjoyed it.
restaurant.
But the restaurant's still great. I was there recently. Yeah.
But Bart, because they did that to me when I interviewed at Benziger.
Yeah.
That I went through the whole interview process, and then they're like, "All right, we're going to hire you," and then they drove me down to imagery, and they're like, "This is where you're working," and I was like, "Oh, I thought I was working with the old dudes up at Benziger," and they're like, "No, you're with the kids down here at imagery."
You're at the kiddie table?
So were you like, did you feel like you were sent down to the lower leagues?
Well, at first I was, because I had never heard of imagery. I had heard of Benziger. I didn't even know anything about the label. But then when I got there and I saw the artwork and saw the unique varietals, I was like, oh, okay, I would probably prefer working down here.
And at the time, those were unique varietals. Like when you were there, like it was... Yeah. There wasn't anyone
Speaking
bottling.
Of varietals, can we talk about the wine we have in our glass right now?
Yeah, let's.
What are we drinking?
And actually, it does all come together. So, speaking of Bouchon, so when you come from restaurants with big worldly wine lists and then get dropped into Napa, and just that myopia of it's literally just cab with a little bit of Pinot and Chard, like that's it, and that drove me nuts.
Yeah.
And so that's why. So the genesis of pretty much this whole project came from those kind of constraints, and I'm not disparaging Cabernet. Cabernet is great, but it's like, you wouldn't listen to the same music every day, you wouldn't eat the same food every day, but people just like some people just know Cab and it's just so unappealing to me. And I enjoyed working in Napa, but after a couple of vintages at Realm, I started looking around, and there were so many wines like Pay and Arnott Roberts and Radio Coteau and all these guys that were doing things, and that was like right when Seratoff started, and I was like, fuck, these wines don't taste like California. Like, they taste like they're European, but they're made here. And I thought that was fascinating. And so when I had the opportunity to make something, it was obvious it wasn't going to be Cabernet, even though people told me I should. It was going to be something unique, and so that's what we've been doing ever since, and it's expanded. So we're just kind of like shifting the California paradigm a little bit.
So first vintage was what?
2010.
2010, and that was made where?
That was made in Forestville.
Okay.
That, if you've ever seen the building.
Yeah.
It's currently where Rhyme is. Rhyme's making their wines there right now.
Yeah.
So it was Arnott Roberts, Rhyme, and what was at the time Wind Gap.
Right.
Was all there.
And were you hired just as cellar help, or were you hired with the intent of, did you come in like, I want to make my own wine, and how did that work?
I certainly didn't. It's funny when you say it like that.
I mean,
no, and totally true. Like, I did a couple of harvests, and it wasn't like, oh fuck, I feel like I know it all. Now I'm going to start a brand and make some wine. Not the case.
No, right.
It was, I was allowed to make a ton or two as like, let's see how badly you screw this up kind of a thing.
Right. Okay.
And it was 1 ton, and then the next year it was 2 tons, the next year it was 3 tons, and now it's
here's where I'm going with it.
150 tons.
Takes over your life.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
like, what have I done?
we've talked about this before. Bedrock University. We've talked about everybody that's come out of that has worked, started at PAX or worked at PAX at some point. And I wish somewhere along the way one of my bosses would have said, "Do you want to make a little bit of wine, your own wine?" I appreciated they let me make some of their wine because it was talk about confidence builders,
Sure.
But, the fact that a winery would go,
Let you choose your own variety.
let you choose your own variety, make, you can make it here. I mean, I'm sure they did it for their own reasons, but I applaud it because it keeps everybody excited about new things and trying new stuff, keeps everybody sharp.
I think Bedrock excels at this, and I don't even know the whole. I mean, I know Cody and I know several of them, but hearing them, like, it sounds like a cult. Like, they all help each other. Like, everyone's in a good mood.
I think
like,
they would prefer commune.
Yeah,
I think after I insulted them in the DTC episode, I might as well don't listen all the way through.
No,
I say Morgan.
I think it's great how they do it.
It's amazing.
It is.
How they have it set up. It's like truly inspiring.
Yeah.
You kind of hinted at it. The PAX thing, like, he can get away with not paying you very much by letting you make a little wine and that kind of thing, whatever. But yes, that's where Rhyme started. That's where Duncan Roberts started.
Yeah.
That's where Jamie Motley started. That's where I started.
Yeah.
Currently, Rosalind Reynolds from Emmy.
Yeah.
And I'm probably even forgetting some names, but yes, a lot of
Yeah.
people. Martha didn't work. Martha was one of the roommates.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at the time, we went from Forestville to the Barlow, Sebastopol. Cool. That was Wind Gap, so Charles Banks and Terroir and that whole thing.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. What happened to Wind Gap? That was a wine
Charles Banks.
that was on the list at the Girl and the Fig. But then what happened to that label?
That's there's a couple podcasts.
Yeah, there's a whole other, that's a whole other episode, really.
Unfortunately, Charles Banks' company, Terroir, kind of had to be dissolved. They wanted to buy Wind Gap, the brand. I think it was pretty tormented while it was happening, but what ended up happening is they took the brand, Pax kept the winery, Pax got his name back, right around the same time, and it just became literally just the sign on the wall went from Wind Gap to Pax. Huh. I think that brand was probably going to sell to something like Foley. I'm not saying that it was, or something like that, and I just never saw it again.
Okay.
So
the Charles Banks story.
No. But
Charles Banks was the like financier, investor, and all these things, and was, among other things, defrauded Tim Duncan, the basketball player, and like stole,
not the guy from Silver Oak.
Not the guy from Silver Oak. No, the Tim Duncan basketball. It's an important distinction. I've never met Tim Duncan basketball player. Tim Duncan Silver Oak's a lovely guy, very different than, much shorter than Tim Duncan basketball player. And he went to jail. He was also part of the Maya Kamis deal. He was involved in tons of wine deals all over California,
New Zealand, South Africa,
all over the world.
All over the place, yeah.
Huh. The Terroir Group, big
Can you make wine in prison?
It's called Pruno,
I imagine
John.
the prison that he went to, probably had a winemaking unit.
Yeah, probably.
It's probably not
How dope would that be?
And I will say, I don't know Charles super well. He was the nicest guy, in my interactions with him. And yes, of course, all that was unfortunate. And to your point, yes, I think it was probably a pretty bougie place compared to what we're picturing from the movies.
So let's talk about the wine work.
And now he's hanging out in Florida or something. He's out of jail already, even.
This is beautiful stuff.
Right. Yeah, let's talk about the wine.
Yeah.
Let's get out of that one.
All right. So in 2010, yes, we started with Truce Gris. Since then, we've added things, and some of these things are unturned stones, being things that were here the whole time, like Truce Gris. It was planted in 78 to 80. A lot of things we've put in the ground. So it's been a constant evolution. This in front of you is Aligote. So this is two different vineyards. For years, we were asking people to put it in, and then two people put it in at the same time. So there's actually two vineyards in here because it was the very first crop, and both were tiny. And they were made similarly. So we just blended them together to make our life easier. And it's delicious. It was the first go of it. This current vintage, as in the one that we just did, we picked one of them much, much earlier with the intent of we currently have it as a base wine, and then we're going to turn it into sparkling. It'll be the first time we ever did sparkling.
Cool.
I know you've talked about that before, but you were like, if you were going to do sparkling, you wanted to do it right. But it's time consuming and kind of expensive, right?
It's all of those things. So we don't,
And it's even more expensive.
Ask Morgan about that.
I don't want to disparage anyone else's efforts. I'm personally, only speaking for myself, not a big fan of Pet Nat. Every once in a while, there's some good ones. For the most part,
It's such a fucking crapshoot.
It's such a crapshoot, and if you're not nailing it, like they're not dry enough, or they're bombs, they're mousy, they're turbid, they're like all the things, all the faults. And even Tim, who's amazing, works for Martha. He's like, "How come you don't make sparkling?" And I was like, "Well, if I can't do it well, I don't want to do it." We happen to be next door to Carbon East, who specializes in sparkling. So we are only making the base wine, and then we'll put it in Taraj with them. He's got all the equipment, the bottling, the acumen, everything. Yeah. So don't think that I'm doing it all myself. Not the case at all. Highly specialized.
You can't. I mean, remember Mark Harrell talking about if he would want to do it all himself, and it would be like baseline, almost like cost of goods, $300 a bottle.
Right.
To sell it for $600.
To do like just grower champagne model.
Do grower champagne the way he fully like in-house. It's so time consuming and
laborious, and you're touching the bottle so many times, especially if you're doing long tirage, and it's complicated. So yes, two different vineyards. One is
will you talk about Aligote a little bit?
Sure.
Just because I don't think there's going to be a lot of people who don't know necessarily, and it's essentially the other Bordeaux Blanc white grape, right? Or is that not how
the other Burgundy Blanc?
I mean, the other Burgundy, the Burgundy white.
Layman's terms, I kind of say like it's Chardonnay's little sister. Technically, the parents are just slightly different, but all the greats, whether you're Rouleau, PYCM, Koch, like all of them, they all make one, but it's declining because Chardonnay is the king, queen, whatever you want to call it, and a lot of what we do, like Gamay, Aligote, they're all kind of underdogs. We even make Malone, so like same variety as Muscadet, and these are considered cheaper, inferior kind of wines, and we like to showcase them.
Vinditab kind of thing.
Totally. Yeah. And so we, like I said, this got put into two different sites. One of them is down at Soleto in San Benito, so just on the other side of the hill from Calera. So there's a lot of limestone down there, cooler temperatures, and then the other one is off of West Side Road, technically Sweetwater. So if you guys have probably heard about this, but there's a guy who has a property out there where a bunch of us all kind of went in on it, but Sam in particular from Idlewild, he kind of organized it, but there's 58 different varieties there now.
Holy shit.
Wow.
Yeah, all in tiny little blocks. So we get Aligote, Gamay, Trousseau, Poulsard, and Mondes all on the top of the hillside.
I feel like that needs to be a on-location show.
Yeah.
The vineyard is stunning. The guy who owns it, it's amazing.
Because let me think about this. That road drops into like Guerneville, right?
Yeah, but it
goes from West Dry Creek. Because I think I've ridden it on my bike before, but it like literally drops you. I mean, it's brutal to get to the top.
You don't even go to, in this one circumstance, from West Side Road, you turn on to Sweetwater, you're only on it for a couple of minutes.
Right.
David bought what was 5, now I think it's 700 acres, which I didn't realize that. You don't realize that there's properties that big. It was a kind of a constellation vineyard, so it was Zin, Pinot, and Cab. That was not organic and farm shitty and all the stuff.
Yeah.
And so when they came in, they started tasting Idlewild and Rhyme, and I can name all the names, Arnold Roberts. And so they brought everyone together and said, what would you do? What would you do? What would you do? And then Sam kind of took all that information. COVID happened, and I think he just got stir crazy. And in a year or 2 years, he had the whole thing flipped over.
Wow. That's so fucking cool.
Awesome.
Well, and to have a grower...
Is it a 700-acre vineyard?
No, property. No, not planted.
What's planted?
That's a great question. Actually, I couldn't honestly answer that.
That's it's either flat enough to plant there, or it's not
Crazy
even flat
hillsides.
enough to
like
walk.
not legally plantable anymore.
Right. So it's like little islands, I imagine.
Totally. It's tiny little parcels. He kept everything small. It's probably more of a pain in the ass than not, because there's so many different people in there and different picking decisions and different, even for the Ryan Meyer who farms it. Just like every variety is different, behaves different. But there's like there's Kerner and Schiabettino and like all kinds of shit.
That's a great training ground for people that wanna get into ag. It's like go out there, and if you want to grow grapes, come out and check out all this shit on one piece of property.
And it's only I think 700 foot elevation, but you're looking down into the whole valley. It's gorgeous.
It's like a 9-sided Rubik's cube.
And no one
just like
no one in Sonoma, and this is part of our challenge too. The whole time, and we're gaining, but no one in Sonoma ever would, if I came to you and said, let's take out your $6,000 a ton Pinot and put in fucking Frappato or something,
shit,
you're like,
right?
no, take a hike, no way.
Yeah.
And so it's really just the kind of genius of the owner, David, who let all that happen, who championed all that.
Well, then what was your experience with Aligote before you made it?
Making it zero, just drinking it and loving it.
And what was it about it that you liked?
It can be, just as good or as great as Chard. It's funny. So my good friend has Cadet in Napa, Aubrey, and we did an interview with her once, and she said, okay, the desert island question, like one wine, either drink or make for the rest of your life. And I said Chardonnay, and she was like, what the fuck? And it's like, that is like counterintuitive to everything that you do. I'm like, well, sure, Champagne, Chablis, White Burgundy, like now even like Patagonian Chard and like all these things. It's when it's good, it's great. Yeah. And sure, Chard can have two heads, and people think they hate it because they either don't like all the acid and or they don't like all the oak, or especially shitty oak. And so people think they don't like Chardonnay, but it's brilliant. Yeah. And so,
it is literally a desert island question. Like if you're on a desert island, fuck yeah, you want some Chablis.
Drink some champagne. Let's go.
Might as well. Yeah.
And sitting.
See if there's some oysters growing out there somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Go to Zuni, order some oysters, and have order the chicken and order a bottle of Rouleau. Right. Aligote. Right. It's like boom.
Yeah. All right. So
That's
then,
awesome.
So then, what are you thinking when you're making it, as far as like having to tell the story about what the hell this is? Because I'm sure a lot of people at first would look at it and they thought that was like your name for like the blend that was in it or something. You know what I mean? There was some people that didn't even know that was a grape.
First go of it, we fermented it mostly in concrete, in eggs. Some was barrel fermented, and kept it in the two mediums. So some of it was an oak, some of it we use all neutral barrels. We had to bottle it a little bit earlier than we wanted, just because the new winery and moving and all this kind of shit. So once a bottle a little bit younger, we would prefer to keep it in barrel a little longer. But for a first go,
this is the first one,
very first one.
Okay,
yeah.
He hasn't figured out how to tell the story.
Exactly.
Telling people, getting the feedback.
Even
this
the one
is why he's here.
Even
he's telling the story. Right
Truce Agree. 13 years in, I haven't figured it out yet.
That's what Jenny's for.
Is this current release?
Current release, yes. Yeah, the ones. So, I guess I should have mentioned all this. So, let's do the whole thing.
Sure.
Tell us about Jolie-Laide.
Exactly. So we say Jolie-Laide. It's anglicized Jolie. If you're saying it correctly, we're saying it French. And what's the one you guys make? Eau de tête?
Eau de tête.
Yeah.
We have a few crazy French names we throw out there.
If you were saying it correctly, you say Jolie-Laide, almost like Led Zeppelin.
Okay, Jolie-Laide.
So Jolie is pretty. Lead is ugly. We also say Jolie-Laide, and we've heard every distorted Jolie-Laide, Laide, like
Jolie-Laide.
Like, we've heard it all. People don't realize that is also not our names, of course. So what that means is it's pretty and ugly. So idiomatically, it's unconventionally attractive, sort of different but good. It's Aligote, not Chard. Gamay, not Pinot. Yeah. It's reserved for a woman who's different looking but prettier because of it. So she's just unique. So that's not something we made up. We just I read it years ago in a book and applied it to the fact that we're not going to make Cab and Pinot. And like I said, this all kind of happened in the Napa days. So it's obscure varieties, a name that no one really knows how to say or what it means. We do, not strange to us, but strange to some people, skin contact on some whites, not the Aligote, but you'll see when we get into Trousseau Gris. We do carbonic on the light reds like Trousseau and Gamay, all whole cluster on Syrah. And then to like really push it, we do change the artwork completely every year.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the artwork.
It was, again, so this whole Napa thing, when I got to Napa, when you're ordering a lot of European wines, people are hyper cognizant about vintage. And in Napa, no one fucking cared. And I was like, it's so strange. How come no one cares if it's 11, 12, or 13? Bring me Camus, bring me Duckhorn, bring me whatever. Yeah. And then it was like, oh, okay, got it. The big guys work really hard for it to be the same every single year. So when you go to the grocery store or wherever you buy wine, it's always going to taste the same. And that drove me nuts because it's an agricultural product and it's not supposed to taste the same. So we force that idea onto people that it's never the same. We're not trying to make it the same. No. Every year is going to be different. And does it confuse the hell out of people? Yes, of course. Even people way smarter than me. Like when we first started, Jasmine Hirsch was like, don't do that. That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. And I was like, too late. I already did it. Like, here we go. And in the beginning, finding artwork, getting 3 or 4 pieces out of somebody, that's a little bit easier. Now we make like 16 different wines. So getting that much out of one person. So like this, all you recognize that it's all the same. This is all Sarah Jarrett, who's amazing. Yeah. Like I said, this was Sabrina Garassi. It's been mostly women. I've done some of the labels myself, but it's artists from all over the world now. We're about to do, so the things we're bottling right now is actually.
Didn't you do a year with an amazing organization in Oakland?
I was just going to say, yeah.
Okay, good. Talk about it.
Creative Growth.
The creative growth. Yeah.
They actually reached out, so it's their 50th anniversary. So we're just now in bottling new wines. So it's 16 different artists from Creative Growth. So if anyone doesn't know, it's a nonprofit. It's an art center for artists with disabilities in Oakland. So it's a full art studio, every medium you could think of, painting, wood cutting, everything, and then a gallery attached to it. And they sell the art that pays the artist and pays for the gallery. They've had the building for 20 plus years. It's the only way they could do it, but it's an amazing organization, and it's great to be able to feature that.
Repeat it one more time.
Creative Growth, creativegrowth.org, O-R-G. It's an amazing space. I was just down there meeting a lot of the artists and picking out some art for this upcoming series. So it'll be the second time.
Because you did that 4 or 5 years ago.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then do you pay them for the artwork, or you get it?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Some's been done, we've had things drawn exclusively for us. Some's been a combination of the two. It started to get more serious. It was probably when maybe even Creative Growth, when we actually had to start signing contracts and pay per unit and confirm that we're not going to put it on T-shirts or make it our logo on our website or anything. This is the only place we can use the artwork, that kind of stuff. So we're buying the rights to the art. Even this one, Sabrina, she's still one of my favorite. Can
we open that bottle to get a?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were supposed to open that or not.
I think that James Joyner, our mutual friend James Joyner, has secured a bottle that he's holding on to. So let's open this one.
Okay, cool.
I want to see what's
I have more. I can find more.
Okay, good.
So this painting, as an example, the original, is massive and it's on my wall.
Oh, cool.
So she sent it to me from Italy. Her painting is amazing. So I bought the original of this and another one in a wood crate with a certificate, all the things. And I think that year was probably 6 pieces of art from her. And I think I paid $1,500 total or something like that. You can go into weird coffee shops and look at the wall and you get a little close. You're like, what the fuck? That's $800? What's wrong with you? Her paintings are so amazing and affordable.
Huh.
I've felt like over the years, there's been art that you've chosen that I wish hadn't gone away. And actually, I think that this might be one of them.
Every year somebody says...
It's got to be really hard sometimes to let go of some of these. I mean,
Sure.
It's the sort of challenge of what you've given it. There's some that were just, obviously they're all great but there's some that you just
Every year,
some hooks on it, right?
Every year somebody says something like, this one's my favorite, or, that last one was my favorite. I can't please everyone, of course.
Right, no.
And there's been some...
that's what's cool about it also. It's every vintage is different. It's the fucking point.
we did
at Imagery,
totally.
same kind of concept. What I always thought was interesting is Bob Nugent used to talk about some pieces, we'd see the artwork first, and there'd be times you go, that's it. And he goes, it doesn't look good on a label. Do you have that same sort of thing?
Sure, totally. Because when you shrink things down,
right?
All the geeky things that people don't realize, your actual label panel, how much space you have. If people are trying to send you art that's really vertical, it doesn't work.
Right. It is a complicated.
There's nuance to it for sure.
And do the artists usually want some wine in?
Of course, yeah.
Return.
And any of the ones, gladly, always.
Yeah.
There's been a few. We actually even got some wine to a woman in the UK. We did a series recently with a woman in Montreal. We did a series with Brian Gaberman, who's an amazing photographer, period, but he was also a skateboard, a pretty famous, well-known skateboard photographer who lives in Sebastopol. So it's been all over the place.
Yeah, really, do you have a library of them all somewhere you could look and see all of them at once? It needs to.
Maybe now that we have the new space.
Yeah, they should that'll be a cubicle that you could sit in. It has all the labels.
We do try to keep a little bit of every label, a roll of it. I'm not positive we have every single one, but we do try to.
So, okay.
Wallpaper.
Since 2010, how many different pieces of art do you know?
No, I could do some real fuzzy math.
We're here for fuzzy math.
I actually don't know.
Make it.
And so we haven't even talked about it yet, but so Jenny and I come from very, very different backgrounds. And we are very left and right brain. So Jenny literally keeps everything together, and I deal with all the artwork. I, was whether I was artistic or autistic as a kid, I'm not sure, but
Where did you guys meet?
Tistic.
I was one of them. And so I think this is just a creative outlet as well. I get to like really scour and looking for different artists to present.
Yeah.
So Jenny and I met, so totally different backgrounds. As you know, I came from restaurants. Jenny, she went to Villanova, got a chemistry degree, and then was making pharmaceuticals in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Somebody gifted her a wine class, I believe, at the Philadelphia Wine School. And she was so compelled. She was like, oh, interesting. There's a lot of science in wine. She came to Davis, got her master's here, and then started working in wine here, worked at a bunch of wineries around here, went all over, did New Zealand and South Africa and other. We met in 2013.
Okay. I'm sorry we didn't get her here with you. You know?
Oh, she loves sending me into the wolves.
Okay. Got it. Enough said.
And without exaggeration, she literally is on her computer right now.
Okay.
She's like getting shit done. I probably have 14 emails from her already.
Okay.
But we always both had our own job that we'd go to during the day, and then this was always the thing we'd come home to is the side hustle. We'd come, did you see that email? Did you pay that invoice? Computers come out, all that kind of thing. Until we got to a point where it was sizable enough that eventually I seceded from the job that I had, and then a couple years later, we needed desperately to get her out of her full-time job.
Right.
But she's worked at a bunch of wineries around here, and so we do. People ask about the winemaking. It's 100% both of us always.
Yeah.
And now we have Bailey and Schaefer also, so we have 2 people in the cellar with us, and then we also have this really great dude, David McCarris, who's helping us with sales.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
Congratulations.
we're a full team now.
Yeah. And new to your new facility.
Brand new facility.
Yeah.
Took over that old
First vintage, right?
first vintage, and it went swimmingly. Not having roommates are fun until they're not fun. And
Sure.
we all did that when we were younger.
Yeah.
I was the bad roommate in pretty much every situation. Pretty sure.
Like leaving shit in the sink all the time. and
100%. The sink,
smoking weed.
The sink would be an improvement, I think.
Are you one of those people that thinks that your dishes have to soak?
Yeah, exactly. For days.
Oh no, we gotta soak those. No, you don't. There's a fucking brush right there. You put them in the dishwasher.
I've never even thought about that.
When we were in the Sebastopol space, we were all getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And like you already mentioned, Martha was there, Capiello was there, Rain is there, Carlo and Mel. Like there was a bunch of us. And as we all grew, we're all kind of like, who's gonna budge? Like who's gonna leave eventually? And I kind of assumed it would be the Mondavi. Like I thought, or Martha, somebody was gonna go, and it just wasn't happening. So that Santa Rosa thing started. So we started to kind of divest interest into that. Unfortunately, it burned down, which was horrible. It was such a murder of a vintage. And then we moved into a Healdsburg space, the old Ramey building, actually, right in town in Healdsburg for 2 years. And then while we worked on this one, so we just got the keys in April and we were ready in August. And we were very smart to use Robert Morris, who you probably know. He owns Ground Crew. He's an amazing dude, but also brilliant as an engineer by trade. But he's built several wineries, including what is now Punch Down, the original Copan, actual Copan, and now his own. And he kind of like puppet mastered the whole thing. The contractors kept everyone on time, on date, and everything.
Did you get good drains? That's
we
what I
got
want to know.
great drains. It's the one thing that the landlords actually shared with us. It's the one thing we can't rip out of there if we decide to fold shop.
Right. Okay.
So they shared the drains. So yeah, we have 2 long drains, but Robert was like, he couldn't have been greater about helping us get this place built.
Yeah.
Because I would have totally fucked so much shit up.
That's something that I don't think we've ever talked about on the
Like
podcast.
a
is
cellar
like
design.
how to ergonomically.
How to build a wine.
It's actually we did. Who was it that worked
About
for
gravity flow
Ravenswood for so long?
Joel Peterson.
No, Mathis. Peter Mathis.
Oh, Peter. Yeah.
Peter Mathis is known to be
Oh,
the
he
great
seems like that kind of,
winery designer, and he doesn't talk about it, but he's helped design a couple wineries, including the massive Ravenswood,
The quarry.
the quarry. So
Thankfully, ours is very simple and lo-fi, but also the dynamic changed. I'm extremely frugal on some things. Maybe I spend way too much money on wine, but whatever.
Well, that's.
But like when you go,
why you make wine.
when you go into the space, Like somebody was just there 2 days ago, and they're like, "Oh my god, it's like literally everything's brand new." Not the case at all. Right. It got a paint job, and it got some walls replaced, and that kind of thing. If you saw it as a bakery, you would not eat the breads.
Whoops.
But people don't think about that when, like, I've opened restaurants before, and there's the architects and designers.
Oh yeah.
And so everyone has a different idea. They want to make it look pretty, but not necessarily functional. Just a simple example is the coffee station. Like, you want to have your coffee maker, then you want to have your shelf with the coffee cups right there. You want to have your refrigerator that holds the cream, something that has your sugar crutes right there, and then your spoons. And so when you're doing a winery, I imagine it's kind of like the same thing. Like you want to minimize movement at all. If you can reach out blindly behind you and grab something because you know it's right there, that's kind of what you want.
I have very strong opinions on this that I'll hold to myself for another show.
So, like I said,
then don't say anything.
We got
I want to have another show about it.
We got very lucky. We were looking at a spot in Healdsburg for a little bit, and it was only 10,000 square feet, and we were like really moving in that direction. We went to go look at a winery in Sebastopol that was moving out, and the space was kind of a dump. And we started looking at 8th Street, whatever. But the winery thought somebody was going to come in and turnkey the space with all the equipment in it. And as that timeline truncated, I was like, "So what are you guys doing with all this equipment?" And they're like, "Oh fuck, we need to start selling this stuff." And so we doubled the amount of tanks that we were going to buy. We were going to have West Tech build tanks. We're like, all right, we'll take all of those. We'll take all of those. The catwalk, $1 a foot. Just cut it out. Like, get it out of here. So we didn't plan to have a catwalk. We didn't plan to have a compressed air and air compressor with punch down devices.
Yeah.
The dynamic changed.
Yeah.
We didn't plan. We have 2 4,600 gallon tanks. We didn't even use them yet. They're just like there in case, like when we get there.
Right.
The only thing we bought new in that whole space was a press because we couldn't find a used one, and the table to go with it.
The great thing about it is now is what they used to do is they used to say, okay, here's the land. Here's where we're going to build everything. Where do the trucks come in? Because the trucks are going to dump into the hopper, and then we got to get it from there to the press or to the tanks. Now, the way winery equipment has changed is everything's movable. Right. You're not using the push press out of the way.
Definitely.
It's not your destemmer's not built into concrete like it used to be, Brian.
Right.
You know, if you need to pump something somewhere, you pump it a short distance or you dump it in, and so that dynamic works great for a big open warehouse because you have an open area that you can design.
Well, different times of the year, you're doing different things. So you want to be able to utilize space so that you can have it for that time of
year. We looked at a lot of spaces, and to your point, that's the very first thing I always look at. Can we get trucks in here? Yeah. It's like the most important. And I've looked at some where people are like, "Oh man, this is going to be amazing." We looked at one in Petaluma, and I'm like, "Where's your forklift going to take grapes off the truck? Where are you going to do that?"
At Kenwood, we'd do 3,000 tons a year, and every set of doubles that came in, you had to have the forklift pick it up and side shift it about 10 times so it could make a corner.
Yeah. It's like moving a couch up and
we have
around
a
stairs.
Massive parking lot, and sure, we're looking at because it's just a big warehouse district. We're looking at Treasury right across from us,
right?
But big trucks can get in and out. It's great.
The best. The best.
Yeah, you watch a lot of big trucks every day
out
of that place.
But if you like, you've been to our space. If you go on the other side of the building, or you said you were making wine on the other side of the building at Obsidian, like everyone's got their bins outside and all their shit outside, and great trucks are trying to go both directions. And
Stone Edge Farm,
Stone Edge, totally, like that middle row, is torture. Like we have so much room on the other
absolutely.
side. It's great.
Yeah,
we didn't do that intentionally. It just worked out that way.
There's no place for employees to park, and someone always parks in front of the grape bin.
And like
you've got to
Ty
dump
Kate,
grapes.
whatever his name is, like throwing a party mid-harvest.
Right.
All right, so Trusso agree.
Trusso agree. So, like I said, little speed contact. You can see it.
Aromatics on this
color.
wine are like.
Yeah.
If obviously people are listening, so they can't see. But if you saw the vineyard and the fruit on the vine. It's so pretty because just like Pinot Gris to Pinot Noir, this is the Gris version of Trousseau Noir, but it's every kind of myriad of light to dark pink to even light purple. So cool. And so when you see that, we wanted to bring some of that to the people who are going to be drinking it. It's technically more of a textural component. That's why we put it on the skins, but color is kind of a happy accident. It does lift the aromatics quite a bit, but it's mostly just like a phenolic change, like texturally.
Yeah. What you get, it's like such a subtle chalk. When it warms up a little bit in your mouth, it's just got this little texture.
The finish of this wine is like blowing my mind right now.
Right, because it just doesn't end.
It doesn't end at I'm trying to figure out what that flavor. It's like blood orange, like chalky blood.
And like I said, every year it's different.
Is that because of skin maturity? Every year,
skin maturity. We've done, in the very first year. So back in 2010, it's still when we were sharing the small space with Arnold Roberts and Duncan, whose favorite wines in California and favorite winemaker in California. But he looked over at me, and I was in the bin stepping on it. And to me, I'm thinking of all the great Gruner producers and stuff. So you're taking a wine that would almost be forgettable on the palate and just kind of like adding some texture to it. And usually they'd put it in a press for, everyone has their own recipe, 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours. Before they turn the cycle on. And so I jumped in the bin and stepped on the grapes, and Duncan's like, what are you doing? You whole cluster cold soaking Trousseau Gris? And I was like, I think so. Yeah. And we did it overnight that first year. And then the next year it was like 2 days, and we went as far as 5 days. We never had glycol before, so we didn't have temperature control. So like in 2015, I think it was only on the skins for a day and a half, but it started to ferment. Yeah. And so I think it dropped from like 22 to 16. And if you were to pour that wine, it was like way more kind of Ramato coppered color, way more tannin texture.
Interesting.
And so
when it starts to be an alcoholic maceration.
That's the two things. So it's aqueous, it's sugar and water, because we just cold soak it. We don't ferment on the skins. Right. And there's tons of ethereal orange wines, skin fermented wines. Those are interesting to me, but working in restaurants for so many years, and whether it's the Grabners, the Radicons, and all the names people know, it's always, you say the same thing. You're like, oh, that's really interesting. It's like, it's fascinating. It's so textural, but we need like food to match that. Right. And so you drink like this much of it in a tasting menu. But totally. So I want the satiability of wanting to like house the whole bottle if you want to. Yeah. At the same time, I want the visceral mouthfeel that you said that keeps going. It's not just like, it's not Muscadet or Rosé that just disappears immediately.
Yeah. Those orange wines they're fun when you have like you said, cheese or charcuterie, and it's kind of cool. It's like doing the banyuls and chocolate or Ikem with blue cheese. Like there's, it makes your mouth do these cool, funny things. But
I mean, this wine would pass the Gallo test, right? Like the orange wine is going to be left over. The Gallo test is the favorite wine is the one that's empty.
Oh yeah, no,
right. And this will be empty, and the orange wines will still have some left
for sure
in it.
Yeah.
And this, if somebody doesn't know what an orange wine is or skin contact or whatever, this is definitely sort of a gateway.
Yeah.
I'm sure you pour this for most people totally blind. They would think it's a rosé. They drink it and think it's fucking delicious.
And we actually make Pinot Gris the same way. And if so many times people are like, man, that might be the favorite wine from you, but it's fucking Pinot Gris. And people have been so tortured by shitty Pinot Grigio over the years that they're just like mentally like, no, I hate Pinot Gris. Yeah. But if you just called it rosé,
variety. How would you describe Pinot Gris in the market? It's just like
totally
it's the garbage wine of
yes,
Santa Margarita.
I know I shouldn't say names.
Right.
I think you can say that. I don't think anybody.
Or who makes a good one? Ancien. You guys ever had that Pinot Gris?
Yeah. And that was so in the restaurants. Every once in a while, somebody would drink something like Viognier, but then this is how I started with Pinot Gris. Whether it was Etude, Sinsky, Ancien, like Pinot Gris was one of these varieties. And often Pinot Gris to me can be kind of like circus peanutty, if you remember those kind of marshmallowy candies. Yeah. And I didn't love it, but we were skin fermenting Pinot Gris for the old Wingap wine, and there was some extra tonnage, so I took a ton, did the same thing that we were doing on Trousseau Gris, and it was delicious. Yeah. And we just kept that going.
Just the aqueous, kind of the
totally
non-alcoholic maceration.
Yeah, because once there's heat and or alcohol, then it's soluble and you're going to grab a lot of tannin. Right. So we're just like tiptoeing into those waters.
No, it's the Philippe Combi approves of this.
It's long cold soaks.
Yeah, the long cold soak. We do that on the Grenache.
They're cold.
We do like 7 to and as soon as it starts fermenting, then you like kick into gear. But if you keep it cold as long as you can and let that that skin macerate just in the water and the sugar.
Sure.
Yeah. Special stuff.
I mean, you put a tea bag in cold water and you put a tea bag in hot water and see the difference. Like that heat and alcohol, it extracts a lot.
Yeah, totally. You know what? You made me think of something when you said Sinsky. Does anyone know what happened to Sinsky? I mean, I heard that, I think I remember they got sold, but I rode my bike by the other day and it's like the winery's been razed.
I haven't seen it in a while.
Someone's
know
obviously going in and tearing it apart and putting it back together.
Oh, it definitely, yeah, it got purchased. But I know I was just in Napa yesterday actually, and I saw they have a sign up for an office down there somewhere. So I don't know where they're making the wines currently.
I always loved those wines. I don't even know who purchased them. I hope it wasn't someone.
I mean, that also
destroy it.
Goes back to the Napa days. So when I moved here and you met all of the people, so me working in the restaurant, everybody would come in, even, Bob and Marguerite Mandavi. And you finally put a name to the face.
Right.
And there was the people, and I'm not going to name. Well, I can name the nice people. There was like the Schaefers and even Joel God and like there was so many people that were amazing.
Right.
And then there was some real like bad people that would treat the staff horribly.
Yeah.
There was people that like literally wouldn't even look you in the eyes. They would just complain all the time. And then as soon as they're like, "Oh, hey, I'd love to meet you. I want to sell you some wine." I'm like, "Yeah, we've met like 12 times.
Right.
You've never once looked at me."
Right. Yeah.
And so it was just it's pretty revealing.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But Bob and Maria, like they were great.
Yeah.
I actually met her on a cookbook tour years ago in Chicago.
It's awesome.
Yeah, they're awesome people.
Where should we go for first reds? I'm thinking.
I brought this one because I heard you mention Cabernet Pfeffer. So that is Trousseau, Cab Pfeffer, Gamay, Valdegui, and Poulsard all together.
So I haven't even poured it in the glass. I just smelled it when I popped the cork, and it I'm totally intrigued.
So I wanted to ask
Is
about.
this our podcast first Cabernet Pfeffer?
I would say it probably is. Yes. You were part. So my neighbor is Mike Hanghold, and I think you bought some Gamay, true Gamay this year. Were you in on that thing?
We have a lot of Gamay.
But from here in Sonoma,
We do have some in Sonoma. We have some on that property I talked about on Sweetwater.
right?
We have some in Fountain Grove.
Okay, this was
we
a
have
vineyard.
Even more
up,
going in.
Vineyard up on this side of on the valley. A guy thought he had Pinot Noir, and it was actually.
I did hear somebody say this, but no, it was not us.
Oh, because you were the guy I told him to call. Because I figured if anyone would want it, that was someone who would want it.
I wonder who bought.
No, so
well, Tom Darling bought some.
Okay.
And I thought that I guess
I know Byron Kasugi obviously has a little bit at the
Byron
shop,
got some.
and there's a little bit over here. We actually have a big property going in with.
Well, so
bunch
this
more.
is a Pinot property on Sonoma
So
Mountain.
DNA tested as Gamay, not.
and it was supposed to be Pinot, and it was DMA tested as Gamay.
Oh, interesting, because there is that that Beaujolais clone of Pinot,
Right.
And again, I won't name names, but I've known people who label it as Gamay,
Right.
and it's actually Pinot Noir.
No, that's why he did the research, because he could never find anybody that liked the wine as Pinot. They all wanted to make rosé out of it, and he was really frustrated. So he had it
Tested.
checked.
Yeah.
And it was.
And that story happens all the time, obviously. The Malone that we take was thought to be Pinot Gris, the Malone we take was thought to be Pinot Blanc. So all the time, there's Bianchetta Trevignano that we made one year that they thought was Vernaccia, and they sent it in and it came back as Bianchetta. Like that, it happens all the time.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. But anyway, okay, never mind then.
So I didn't get that
Let's go back to
Gamay.
this
So
one.
we've done Gamay for years. Same thing was that underdog thing. When I was working in restaurants and I got introduced to Beaujolais and all the crus and Village and all that stuff, and I just love that wine. And sure, even go further back to the history of them being ostracized from Burgundy, the variety being ostracized from Burgundy, and this inferiority complex that they have. And some Beaujolais producers want to make wines that are very Burgundian and serious,
Right.
and others want to make fun, irreverent, juicy, delicious, and they're both great.
Right.
So I became fascinated with Gamay once I got here. I remember working like in the cab house. I told people I want to make Gamay, and I told people I want to make rosé too. And both times they're like, "Why? Why would you want to do that?"
Right.
Cabernet is king.
Right.
But the winemaker at the time, Mike Herby, graciously, he actually took me out to the old Frediani vineyard to look at Valdegui, obviously AKA Napa Gamay back in the day.
Right.
And old man Frediani, threw us on the tractor and we drove around and looked at it, and it's like they don't even touch it. They don't farm it. They don't do a single thing.
So
It just grows. They prune it. Okay. That's it. And then he's like, "How much do you want?" I was like, half a ton or whatever it was. I just want to play around. He's like, "Oh, Jesus, no. It's like 20 tons. It all goes to E2.
Oh, God.
It goes in their rosé." He's like, "We're not going to deal with you, kid." So we waited. So Steve Edmonds, and you guys have probably all had Edmund St. John, who's a legend, but he took Ron Mansfield to Beaujolais years ago, and he was like, "Look, man, pink granite. This is what you have in El Dorado. You should be growing Gamay in California." So they came back with material, put it in. I actually,
A little like suitcase.
I believe so. Don't quote me on that.
Legend has it.
Legend, yeah.
I think the statute of limitations is up.
Okay.
Probably.
I reached out to Steve, who famously has always made wine in the East Bay. And I've always liked his wines, his Shiraz, everything. And he met me at, it's like 2 doors over from Shape and Ace. I'm forgetting the name of the place. But so we sat at the bar, hanging out for a while, tell him how much I like him and his wines, whatever. And I was like, man, I really like that Gamay. Can I have some? And he very politely laughed me off. He was like, no chance. It took me years to get that in the ground. There's no way you're going to get some.
Right.
So then we started working with the grower to expand on the planting. So we took an old Pinot Gris vineyard, turned that all into Gamay. So Arnott Roberts, or what was at the time Raj and Arnott Roberts, did that RPM label.
Right.
And so we started with 1 ton, and then it turned into 3 and 4, and then now we get something like 25 or 30 tons of Gamay that we split between red and rosé.
Okay.
But part of the component in here is we've lost that. Yeah, we all had fires, but El Dorado had those fires 3 years in a row. So we keep losing that component. That's why Valdegui came back into here. Okay. It's because we kept losing Gamay.
Because that was what it was, is that Valdegui and what was thought was Gamay was a lot of times Valdegui.
Yep.
Correct?
That's what they called Napa Gamay.
Napa Gamay. And people would said, "Oh, I'm making Gamay," but it wasn't. It was Valdegui, and they are different, right?
They're totally different. But if we were sitting at the winery, if I pulled a barrel sample of Valdegui, especially the way we make it, we force it carbonic.
Right.
It is so red fruited and juicy.
Really?
You
Yeah.
would think it's Gamay.
Yeah.
But that's people's argument sometimes with carbonic, because you could have Reeve makes a Pinot that's carbonic that kind of tastes like Gamay. Mike Lucia from Root Down did a Sangio that was carbonic that was very Gamay-like. So people do say it kind of obliterates terroir because they all have that same kind of fruity overtone.
Right.
But it's fucking delicious. So we still do it.
Yeah. Okay.
I remember, I think the first time I had I had called it Valdegui was Talisman. And I was trying to find a way to fit it onto the Grow in the Fig wine list. So I
this Pinot.
no, they make a Valdegui.
There was probably some Pinot that they were getting.
I don't know. And so I even had to I found a place in Southern Rhone where someone was growing some. So I was trying to sell Sandra on it. I'm like, hey, it could be a Rhone varietal. No.
And it looks on the vine.
It's not on the poster, Brian.
Big clusters. It looks like it's going to be dark and dense, almost like Petite Syrah or something. And it's not at all. It's so red fruited and spicy. It weirdly is one of the best ferments.
You want this?
Yeah.
All right.
So we made our lives even worse. So 2 years ago, and as is often, the artwork was very ornate, and legally, I'll confess now that we do a lot of things that are not technically legal on the labels. But legally,
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
How could you
getting
do
worse?
How could you do such a thing? Yeah.
So this is one of those examples where we actually did something correct. Is if you're gonna name all the varieties, you have to put all the percentages and all this kind of nebulous information, and it's getting worse as we all know it's coming. So we just called it red wine, which has created even more confusion because people assume that it's like Merlot or Zinfandel or something.
No.
But no. So this is Trousseau from 3 different vineyards. Cab Pfeffer from San Benito, also Trousseau from San Benito, and Trousseau from Lake County, Trousseau from Sonoma County, Valdegui from Sassoon, Gamay from Sonoma and El Dorado. And what else is in there?
Fuck, so you're driving.
Oh, between us, so we have some friends we make some wine for too, some really good friends, and AKA clients, that between the two of us, the war board is something like 50 plus vineyards, but spread over 8 counties or whatever. Yeah. So we go to Yorkville, Mendo, we've gone to Lake, we go down to Chalone for Malone, so Base of Pinnacles, a lot in San Benito. I spent a lot of time in a flatbed.
Yeah. Well, you didn't bring them alone, but can you just talk a little bit about it? Because I've had a lot of it.
Over the years, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I've only really had French ones, though. I've had very few Californian.
I don't know.
Maybe Hardy back in when he used to make it.
It's the same fruit. That was the thing. Hardy introduced me to it.
Okay. So is that Chalone or that's Chalone?
It's Chalone.
Yeah.
So it's not the actual Chalone vineyard; it's next door.
right.
So it changed hands. The name changed. Bill Brousseau was farming it forever.
Okay, yeah.
But Hardy also works with Brousseau, and so all those vineyards. So where does it go? It goes Brousseau. I'm forgetting the gentleman's name in the middle, and then what was Antle, and I'll call Rodnick. Michaud's in the middle. Michael. It's all kind of contiguous.
Right.
Often not even fence lines. They all just kind of runs together. That area is amazing, but there's a reason that. So Dick Graff originally, the original Chalone, Josh Jensen when he started Calera, all these guys wanted to replicate Burgundy, and there's very little limestone in California, and so they went after limestone. And when you drive there, because you drive into Soledad, you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, and you start driving up the hill. So it's literally the base of Pinnacles. You're driving into Pinnacles National Park, and when you're going up, you're like, why would anyone plant grapes here? It looks like a high desert. But you do have the elevation, you do have the big diurnal swing, but you have limestone. That's what they were after. So Pinot, this many years later, in hindsight, probably not the best choice. But Rhone varieties do amazingly. Right. Whites that we're picking early. And it does do a weird thing because you think Malone, like it does get hot out there. It's a pretty warm place. But as we know, you get to 100 degrees and things shut down. Right. So when you have this big diurnal swing with really hot days, they're shut down during the day and then they're not doing anything at night because it's cold. So the ripening is actually stunted. So you think it's going to like ripen really fast, and it doesn't. Yeah. Huh. We still pick it. We pick that at like 18 and a half, though.
And then you still like the fog that when it gets 100 degrees at that end of the Salinas Valley, it sucks that fog right out of Monterey Bay.
Yep.
So it must cool it down. Does it get foggy?
Well, you're above the fog.
You're above the fog, but
yeah.
It just makes it cold.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because when you're driving south, all the focus is on your right to the west. Because all those massive vineyards
Santa Lucia
Highlands, but that's it is what it is. But the interesting stuff is on the other side.
You can't even see it.
You can't even see it, right. And so you have a hard time imagining where it's at.
You definitely can't see it. You have to drive.
Right,
it's like a 25-minute drive up the hill.
Yeah, and I think people sometimes go, "Oh, well, in Soledad, that must be around here," and you look over at that other side.
Soledad is like it's one exit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a farming town.
Yeah.
There's a couple taquerias and a Starbucks, and that's it.
It's all happening there.
It's happening in Soledad. Yeah, you're totally right. That's the sign.
The billboard forever.
So yeah, Hardy Wallace, who is amazing. He introduced me to that fruit years ago. Dick Graff planted it again.
Really?
Oh, Hardy?
Hell yeah. We haven't done anybody this whole.
No, but for so long, it's like all these old. It's dinging's all the old guys, right?
Yeah, we got Hardy. Give Hardy love. He's a neighbor now.
I know.
Hardy's amazing. Big fan.
So are we.
So, like I said, Dick Graff years ago, who unfortunately died a long time ago, but he's kind of a legend. He was like one of the pioneers of bringing actual Burgundian barrels over and barrel fermenting Chardonnay and all this kind of stuff.
I actually found Dick Graff's daily planner.
Seriously?
At a phone booth. I'll tell you the time. And the phone booth was Arnold Drive at Grove, the Chevron station. I used to stop there, and I would call my girlfriend at the time and say, "Hey, I'm halfway home from the winery," and I found his day planner, and it was full of stuff. And I found a business card, and I contacted whoever it was. I contacted him. And then someone came, I met him at Kenwood. They came and picked up his day planner, and they brought me a case of Edna Valley Semillon.
Wow.
As a thank you. So I always thought about that guy, and then when he died, and he died.
Plane crash.
Yeah, violently, I was going to say, yeah.
Like Dagenham.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Same thing like Dagenham, like an experimental aircraft thing?
I can't.
Or no? Okay. That would be fucking weird. Yeah. So it must have been while he was working on.
It was
Carmenet with Jeff Baker.
Carmenet. Well, at that time also they had purchased what is now Lassiter, right?
Oh, right.
And remember they wanted to, and this would have been the time.
So when was this? This was like the early 90s or something. I'm trying to remember when they had.
This was the early 90s.
When they bought. It was called Grand Cru, right?
It was called Grand Cru, and at Kenwood we used to store wine at the old Grand Cru, right? There was a tank farm out there, and Chalone had purchased it, and they were going to build little casitas down there.
Fascinating.
Was what we were told, and it was just going to be a bottling plant, and there's a school there, right? The Dunbar School, and the parents of Glen Ellen came up with a bumper sticker that was Carmenet, don't crush our kids. And they didn't want them bringing in all the tanker trucks and the glass trucks down the driveway because of the school. And Chalone therefore walked away from it. And then the Lasters ended up with it years later.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And they bring the trucks in now.
Yeah, no, because they're in a
No,
state
it's a
winery.
state winery.
And,
Not a lot of trucks coming in there.
Yeah.
There's trucks, a little bit.
A little bit of enterprise stuff.
Little enterprise trucks coming from the other, the satellite vineyards.
Yeah.
Well, it's a tight area back there. It's just is.
But
Well,
that's what
that's why-
cool. I mean, it's like one of the oldest elementary schools in
Yeah.
college.
That's why Purple was like that. They didn't want all the trucks coming in, so that's why they couldn't actually crush grapes there. And you listen to also a big fan of the Bedrock Actual podcast that Chris does. He did that Pat Wurst interview, which was great. But you hear how much wine they were making in San Benito in that area.
Wow.
Like how many trucks were coming in and out. Insane.
crazy.
I'm gonna grab this.
All right.
So this, I will say, and I could pretty much say it about all the wines, we tend to pick things early or conservatively, and just because I say early doesn't always mean by bricks. So like when you're pouring something like Syrah, if it's a cold site like Yorkville, we're still picking end of September, beginning of October. It's still only 22 bricks. We like to keep acid fresh. We don't want to have to add it later. Everything's, we don't inoculate. We foot stomp everything. Everything's whole cluster. We do all the light reds, anything that's of the same ilk. So Gamay and Trousseau and Poulsard, Valdegui, those kinds of things. We do force them all carbonically. I mean, we all probably accomplish that in different ways. We have kind of a way that we've fabricated over the years and found successful for us because we, especially with the whole cluster, we like the lifted aromatics, and it's not on the skins as long, so it keeps tannin down and keeps it fresher. Only in barrel for like 6-8 months. And then Syrahs and Grenache and that kind of stuff. It's just full bore, foot stomp, flip, wait for it to ferment.
So do you have a distemmer?
We just bought one used because we do make the other wines.
Right.
It's called Sophie James.
Yeah.
So they make a lot of Pinot, and so we bought a destemmer for them.
But for your wines, you're not.
I've never once destemmed it. And there's been times where, like, we were making Provisor Grenache for a little bit, and I'd be like, man, it's kind of boxy. The tannins are kind of rough. Maybe next year I'll destem it. And then, we'd be mid-harvest, and I'm on top of a tank. We used to, load it's super dangerous, but we used to load the concrete. So it was two people just standing on shovels and someone rotating the forklift at you and, trying to get it in the tank.
Right.
And someone would be like, oh, I think they're breaking down the destemmer outside. And I was like, fuck it.
Because you gotta clean the destemmer. That's the problem with having a destemmer.
It's totally true, but there's a lot of people, and we get it, right? California has no problem getting ripe and boozy and alcoholic and phenolically ripe. There's a, dare I say the word herbaceous quality, a savory quality that comes from stems, especially when that whole argument about stems being lignified and not and all that kind of stuff. Like when we're picking, the stems are bright green,
right,
and we just foot stomp and go.
Right.
But we like that undertone of savoriness that stems bring. So, you can name a lot of people. There's Burgundy producers that do exactly the same. There's 100% destem, and then there's 100% whole cluster like Dujac, and I like that flavor.
Yeah. David Ramey had a comment on one of our podcasts where he talked about lignification and how it's been missed. I can't remember it, so go back and listen to it. But from his experiences,
if we waited for lignification, we'd be at picking Syrah 30 bricks. Because if no one knows what that means, and I assume everyone does, but it's waiting for the rachis to turn to actual wood, and I've seen people do all kinds of shit. Like when we worked in South Africa, we would destem things and then hang it in nets.
Right.
And then add it in very specific ratios. You can dry it in a kiln. You can put it on the roof and dry it and add it in the way they
On a
want.
hot tub.
On a hot tub.
on a hot tub.
Okay, Mark Harold.
We just keep all the stems in.
Yeah.
What about filtering?
Only when it's needed. So if anything, the only thing that would take us out of the quote unquote natty camp, which I'm very glad not to be in, because cleanliness is a major priority for us, and it's the best compliment we get. The only thing that ever has to be filtered is something that hasn't gone mallow dry. So Malone, Pinot Gris, sometimes Trousseau Gris. I mean, of course, it goes through some of it concurrently.
So do you have a good technique for getting whites to fall as clean as those are?
Racket clean.
Yeah. I mean, they look great.
We were just having this conversation yesterday. we made rosé for our friends that like through a haze stayed hazy, and then we sent it to the lab. They spun it, and they're like, "Oh, it's just suspended yeast." So that came out in filtration. But whites, like the aligote stays in egg, and it gets pretty cold, but the egg does keep things up a little bit.
Right.
But when we go to tank, let it settle, turn the chillers on, move it tank to tank right before bottling. But so rosé, Pinot Gris, Malone, things that haven't completed malo. And the lesser evil for us is, whether you're drinking Bouscadet or even, people don't talk about filtration because they think all the greats like Bourguignon, rosé, and all that kind of stuff. It's like, of course it's filtered. Right. It hasn't gone through malo. You have to filter it. Right. But if a little bit of sulfur and some filtration on whites are the two things that make us not natty.
Yeah.
I like to say natural, not natty.
Right. Yeah. All right, so Syrah. Yes. And where is this vineyard?
This is Hawks Butte, Yorkville Highlands. So just south of, most people, of course, and you guys know where it is, but most people think of Anderson Valley. So this is, you drive through Yorkville to get to Anderson. Kind of the same thing that when we think of Carneros and that cold air that comes through the wind gap, similar. So colder area, higher elevation. So you're at and sometimes above the fog line. So you get these like really dense skins, less mold pressure, less sulfur sprays. Not that there's anything wrong with sulfur sprays, but you get to do less of it. And that Malone, like the Malone hasn't had sulfur in it in years, CCOF now, but it's just so arid and dry down there. Yeah. It doesn't need it.
And what elevation is this at?
This is 1100.
Yeah. It's amazing how it's to get up there. I mean, that's a pretty steep climb.
Yeah, so it's kind of like right before you get to Boonville.
Yeah.
I love Syrah from out there.
Love it out there.
And Syrah on cold sites.
San Josef olive tapenade aromatics thing going on that I love. Yeah.
And Sashi's Rimrock, Arnold Roberts, Radio Coteau, Jason Drew, like the people who do Syrah well, do it really well. At least my version of what I like in Syrah. All the things that you just named, the game, the violet, the camphor, the olive, especially the pepper, like. Yeah, just whole cluster Syrah.
Delicious.
And we're not in barrel super long, and that was born out of just we didn't have the space, so we would be in barrel for 11 months.
You were just flipping it,
and then we would bottle because we need those barrels back. We need that space back, so we'd bottle in 11 months, which is for us. We loved it because we're really capturing freshness. But whole cluster Syrah is viciously tannic when it's young, of course. So our cycle is we bottle in 11 months, but then we don't release it for 14 more months. So it goes to bottle in like less time in barrel, less fruit going stale, less sulfur use over the duration. Now that we're in a bigger space, and because of the nature of us moving, we had to move our barrels to a different winery while we were waiting for this one to get finished being built, and we didn't have the chillers in yet. So that forced us to buy the extra barrels this year. So we just bottled the 22s in December. So now we will probably, for things like Syrah, go a little bit longer.
Yeah, but now you have the space.
Now we have the space that we can actually
play around with these things. Will not be forced by the space to.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, that's cool.
Well, how much of your wine
Also,
is?
don't change too much because it's obviously working pretty well.
Yeah, no kidding. How much of it is going direct to consumer? Like how much is?
It's a moving target because you start creeping into the 40 and 50, and then you have a growth year, and that knocks you back to like 30. But I'd say 35, 38, something in that window.
Because you guys have kind of it's a little bit unusual wine club, right? In that it's not like 6 bottles twice a year. It's
we never had a wine club, and it was me being naive. I just didn't like the idea of forcing wine on people.
Yeah.
And people showing up kind of banged up and signing up for something and regretting it later.
Right.
So I never really wanted one. And we need to have a space to host people at some point. Like you guys have this great place. We've just never got there. We put all of our energy into the winery, which is great because we like to control. But our it's nerd stuff, but our back of house, so Vine Spring, we were not forced into, but we switched to Commerce 7, and they have that kind of built in. And so our friend Jim Cooner, who helps us manage that part, he's like, oh, now it's already built in. You guys should do it. I begrudgingly said yes, and I didn't realize how many people, like a bunch of people signed up immediately because they don't want to think about it. They don't want to track emails and worry about release dates and is it going to sell out. So many great people just signed up, and it's totally modifiable. You get an email that says wine is coming, so it's pre-selected, but you can go in and you can dump the whole cart out. You can make it all Truce Gris if you want. It's totally modifiable.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of based on seasons, right? It's like you guys have spring, summer,
this year,
fall, something like
because
that.
we have so many wines. This year, it's like 16, 17. This year, we're actually going to do 4 releases, which is the first time. And it's funny because we keep putting more things in the ground. Like now we have Mondi's, and we were doing these one-offs every year, not like, because so there's things like Gamay and Truce Gris we've been doing forever, and we feel like we've done okay thus far. At the same time, when something more obscure comes our way, we're like, yeah, let's try that. I want to see what that grows like, see what it ferments like, see what it tastes like. So we did Fraser one year, we did Claret Blanche one year, we did, like I said.
Where did you get Claret Blanche from? Wait a minute.
Brian is going to follow you to the ends of the earth till you find a bottle of your Claret Blanche.
Are you a fan? I'm sure I can. Martian Ranch all the way down in Santa Barbara, like Los Alamos. I drove all the way down there for harvest. It was terrible. No, I mean the vineyard's great.
The drive was
it was. I shouldn't do stuff like that to myself. And Jenny and I both were like, whatever, it'll be an adventure. We went down a couple times, and we knew it needed to get picked, so we jumped in the flatbed, drove all the way down, stayed at that cool Skyway Motel or whatever it is, went into Los Alamos, dropped the bins off, came back for the pick in the morning, drove back, got stuck in traffic. I got lost. I took the wrong way. We're fighting in the car ride. It took us like 11 hours to get back during harvest. I'm like, I'm never doing that again.
2 reasons not to do it. 2 words. Morgan Hill. Just like that drive on 101 North when it bottlenecks at Morgan Hill.
Yeah, totally. But so it's at Martian. We worked with Claret in South Africa. Our good friends like Mick Craven was making a great one. I don't think he's making it anymore. Some of you worked with all the Rhone producers. I think Pagao is like 100% Claret in their Tête de Cuvée. So there's some great examples of it. Yeah. Chris Cherry at Via Creek, who you had on.
Maha.
They have Claret. Yeah.
Yeah. The great ones that I've had have been from Chateauneuf, where it's like 100% Claret Blanche. But I'm just kind of curious here in California, like what it's doing, like what's the right place to grow it, and what are people doing in terms of élevage, and like what are people doing to
and to taste the nuance different. Like I never had. That's not true. We had Martian Ranch's version. I've had Chris's version, and stylistically we just do things so different. He's like one of the best people on the planet, but our winemaking is similar but different, where his is like more opulent, more textured, more wood, like definitely like more complete and filling, where ours we picked really lean intentionally because that's one of those varieties, like most Rhone varieties, like it turns a corner and it gets kind of fat and waxy, and we tend to prefer the leaner side of that, almost like Peak Pool or something. We wanted it to be like Chablisian.
Yeah. And so what happened to that? Where you made it? And
we did
sold
it. Did it just 1 year. Yeah. It was always meant to be a one-off.
Yeah.
This year, I swore I wasn't going to do it this year. We were trying to scale back a little bit to pay for that winery.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, no goofy shit this year. Just like put your hands in your pocket, don't do it. Then of course I get a call. There's 1970s planted Shoy Rebe in Napa. And
where?
And I signed a piece of paper that says I'm not supposed to name where it comes from.
Yeah. I'm sorry. What is it?
Shoy Rebe. So it's like a. They thought it was Riesling and Kerner once upon a time, but it's not. It's another variety that I can't even name, Samling 88 or something like that. Right. But it's a Riesling cross.
Okay.
It's pretty easy to figure out where it came from because I'd never even of all the dessert wines that I'd seen in Napa. So like the Farniente makes the whatever it's called,
Dolce.
The Dolce, exactly. There's like some pretty ubiquitous ones. There's a winery that was making Shoy Rebe dessert wine or ice wine forever. Since the 70s. It was suitcased over by the original Krug, who was the winemaker at this winery, and it's been there ever since. And they're making dessert wine, and now that it got purchased by LVMH, they don't really need the dessert wine SKU, and so they're like, this is the first time we're ever going to sell it. And so we went over and looked at it, and of course I'm like, sure, sign me up. I don't know what I'm going to do with this stuff. Yeah. And so I reached out we shared it with Evan from Ruth Lewandowski. And then the only person that I actually reached out to Cody, but I thought Bedrock Crew would probably be interested, and Cody's Rieslings are amazing. But he was just kind of, not in a good place to say yes to extracurricular stuff. And I thought the only person who could tell that story the best in Napa was Steve Mathiasen. And so Steve signed up, and he took the remainder of it.
And so what did you do with it? And what do you think?
It's in a tank right now. We fermented it in egg. What didn't fit in the egg, we had in a stainless drum just to try to keep it pretty linear. It was like hyper aromatic in the fermentation, as you would expect. It's like really high terpene, like high banana. We needed the eggs. That was the very first pick this year. So it took up one of the eggs, but we also ferment Malone and Aligote in the eggs as well. So we needed those eggs back. So we put it to barrel and stainless drum where it sat until just now. It just went to tank for cold stability.
Cool.
So we bottle in a month. So we already have Malone, Pinot Gris, Trousseau Gris, Choy Rebe, and Rosé. All
Put
up
it in like
tank.
a Riesling bottle, long and...
No. So when I first started, like I drew this piece of paper. It was before we had Gamay, but I was like, okay, it was before we had Trousseau, but those were varieties that I was going to manifest at some level. And I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool? Like Trousseau Gris, there's this bottle that has these like Jura-esque shoulders, but it has more of a hock style.
Yeah.
And it was like Pinot Gris can go in like an actual hock bottle, just because I wanted to say things like rock out with your hock out. But so I was like, oh, but then once you kind of actually get into, like you said, the nitty gritty of how things work,
Right.
all the different companies you'd be buying the glass from, potential different corks, all the line changes, $250 every time you do a line change. It was like, okay, we're just going to pick one bottle. Everything's going in that.
Yeah, smart.
Yeah. I got intrigued with Kerner. Is there a lot of that growing here in California?
I don't think there's a lot. I know there's some, whatever it's called now, what used to be Campani Portis. There's like Riesling and Kerner and Sylvaner and probably like Green Hungarian and all kinds of stuff, but it's just a mix. It's a field blend.
Yeah. And then you talked about Mathiasen. Have you ever played around with some of the Ribolla?
I've never made the Ribolla, no.
Yeah.
I would try it.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't skin ferment it though.
It's the one you wouldn't skin ferment?
I like I said, the beauty of individuality is we're individuals.
Yeah.
And people sometimes, like when they come to the winery, you can tell if somebody does or doesn't like something and they're like nervous to say or they don't want to hurt your feelings. Yeah. And you're definitely not going to hurt my feelings. Because like, you might not like mushrooms or uni or whatever it is. Like we all taste things differently. And so for me only, like I'm just not that big on the skin fermented whites.
Yeah.
And so if I was to make Ribolla Giallo, I probably wouldn't skin ferment it. But at the same time, like I remember Rhyme probably still has these really cool puncheons with lids on them, and he would fill it up with Ribolla, and 6 months later he would open it up and you scoop off that top layer, and it's like you've transcended right back into harvest again. The fruit looks like it hasn't aged at all. It was fascinating to see, and their version is great. Like they do the his and the hers with the Vermentino. Like the Vermentino can be light and clean and bright and delicious, like Megan's version, or it can be textured and more savory, like Ryan's version. Yeah. But yeah, like Ribolla, I probably wouldn't skin ferment it.
Have you tried those wines? Those two, the his and hers?
No.
Oh, really? They're great. I'm surprised you actually haven't had that.
Yeah. We should try to get a couple bottles and do that sometime.
All right, cool.
Pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
You see two different versions of the same variety.
Awesome.
Even with us, like Trousseau Gris.
From the same house.
We do our version. William Allen skin ferments his. Zeitgeist does theirs direct to press. And there's continuity in all of them.
Right.
Like same profile, they're just all slightly different.
Yeah.
I'm so curious about this.
The Rossi.
As long as it's not corked, let's go.
No, it's not corked. I'm not going to say anything until you try it.
I haven't had one of these probably in 8 or 10 years. Yeah. I mean, this is going on 10 years old. So
This is 2014 Jolie-Laide.
Wait, it's 14?
2014.
Okay.
Grenache.
Thank you, sir.
So this was Grenache Syrah co-fermented with Viognier and Muscat.
And so all Rossi or the
100%
Muscat?
all Rossi.
Okay, Muscat. There's some Muscat.
There used to be. This was before. So this
was in the transition of
before
Enterprise coming.
Phil was full time.
Okay.
So Greg Adams was out there. I got introduced to it. The story I was told, I can't corroborate it, but the story I was told was that when they brought the Viognier out to co-ferment with Syrah, some Muscat ended up in the Viognier, and so there was just Muscat out there. Right. And I thought that was fascinating. And Muscat's a funny grape because I certainly don't like to drink it on its own. And it's one of the few varieties that tastes like Muscat. It tastes like the finished wine. It's so fucking floral and aromatic. Yeah. But there was so little of it. I was like, yeah, sure, just pick it in. And they didn't even feel comfortable doing that. And one year, Jenny and I had to go out. They picked all the red fruit, and we went out the next day and cut off all the white clusters and brought it to the winery and hucked it in the tank. I mean, there's a lot to. You drink a lot of Northern Rhone wines. There's a lot like that little bit of Viognier. They say co-pigmentation, like it helps stabilize color, but it also lifts aromatics. Those ripen at like a big disparity. So Viognier goes way ahead. So it's actually kind of like an alcoholic lift as well. Yeah. But it can just be so perfumed and pretty when you co-ferment. And I just thought it was. Yeah. So we didn't ferment them all separately and then put them together. We just hucked it all into a tank together.
Yeah.
What's amazing about it, texturally and totally different than the Rossi wines that we make. But you smell this wine, you smell it, and it's Rossi Ranch. Yeah. You smell it, it's Rossi Ranch.
And it's got a meatiness too.
Oh, it's very nice.
Yeah.
Really is.
Or a earthiness. I mean, there's like the mid palate is just flaming. God, it's good.
I'm glad it's not corked, but I'm glad it's hanging in there. I just thought for you guys get to, because you also make Rossi, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for you guys, you get to taste fruit off that vineyard all the time.
Right.
That'd be fun.
Not of this age.
Yeah, what a killer vineyard. I mean, when your pops came out there, he was so great. He'd walk me around, and unfortunately, it was like, you probably remember this, it was very J-rooted and spindly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of these, like this Viognier and stuff's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Phil had said, he's like, all right, this is all going to rip out. And unfortunately, it's not doing well, especially at that age. It shouldn't have been all spindly like that. So it got too much water. It wasn't planted well, whatever happened. He even had some criticisms about how it was being pruned, especially for old vines. And even the Grenache was on arms, not because all big cluster things, your dad prefers head trained. But at that same time, I think I paid, and hopefully this doesn't hurt your feelings. I don't know what you're paying right now, but I paid like 24 and 27 respectively.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then and he warned me too. He's like, look, when we were about to put a lot of money in this vineyard, it's going to turn into, I think at the time it was going to go to 45, probably above that. And that's where it just, especially me at the time in 2013, I was 3 years in. Yeah. We made $28 and $30 bottles of wine, not $45 and $60 bottles of wine. That's where it was like, okay, call Keplinger, call Andy Erickson, people who can command that.
Right.
Call Bart Hansen.
Yeah.
Call Bart Hansen.
And all I know is I wanted to make wine off that vineyard forever.
Well, it's stunning. It's amazing.
It's amazing. So someday I'll figure out how to do it right.
How long is the line to get in at Rossi?
I don't know. It depends which way you go.
Depends. Yeah, exactly. All depends on which tour you're looking for.
Well, then you got like Philippe coming and taking some of your Rossi and
it's depends.
Okay,
It all depends.
It
depends on what variety you want and when you want.
How many people are still out there? I mean, I would love to take fruit from out there too.
There's still there's some political, ones. There's like some wineries that you sell to because the owners invested in them. And then there's you have Rosemary Cake Bread. Helen gets some fruit from out there. Artie Jones.
Oh, Helen does?
I think she still does.
Yeah, see, Helen and Rose, those make sense to me. They're great people.
Tony
great wines.
Biaggi. We make some from out there. There's some Abbott's Passage that comes out of there.
Some Guthrie. Or Stewart.
Yeah,
I
Stewart
think that's
Cellars.
on the Stewart side.
I was going to say.
Carlisle.
Yeah.
Carlisle makes sense.
Yeah.
Bart Hansen.
Yeah.
Legend.
Yeah.
Who else? There's a couple. I'm sure I'm forgetting people. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
trying
a lot.
That's
trying to
quite
go
a-
back to April Fool's Day and be like,
yeah,
who the hell
exactly.
was out there? I mean, Sosi,
Yeah,
which is now
Sosi and
Melka,
Staglin.
yeah,
You know,
Right. Oh, Staglin. Right. Risa. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
everybody's guilty by association.
And that's one of so me coming from Chicago, when I first moved here, it was almost like agoraphobia. I was like, what have I done? I moved to the middle of nowhere. And I was living in Napa first. I went down and intentionally introduced myself to like Jared from Donkey and Goat and Chris Brockway, because the fact that they were living this urban lifestyle and making wine in the city, I thought that was brilliant. I wanted to do that.
Right.
Then I took a job in Sonoma County. Then I started making wine in Sonoma County. Fast forward, now we have a winery in Sonoma County. So, but you also, I'm a hell of a lot older now, and so you don't care as much. We go to the city and beat it up for 2 nights and go see shows and eat restaurants and do all the things, and then drive back over that bridge all hungover and like so ready to be back in quiet Sonoma County.
Right.
Yeah.
I was riding with a friend today, and he had just got back from in Patagonia, and he goes, it was beautiful. He goes, but you know what it's not? He goes, it's not Sonoma County. And this morning it was like stunning, even with the gray background. Everything's so green.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's just
Every time I fly in, I feel it's so good to be back.
Still winter technically, but it's spring.
It's
spring
definitely
sprung up
Irish
there.
green. It's
Oh,
very.
totally. This is the
yeah.
most. It's so like that verdant, bright, epic.
This is what I remember.
green
as a kid.
everywhere except where there's
Green is
rows
the,
of shade.
Green is the stems when Scott's picking his.
Whole cluster, let's go.
All right, so if people want to try your wines, you guys are actively doing tastings at your space?
So currently, no. Sure. Send me an email, Scott at Jolie-Laide Wines and or often info at is better because I'm so terrible with email. There's more eyes on that email address.
Jenny.
Right.
Yeah, if you want a response, Jenny or info at. But yeah, the whole thing, JOLIELAIDE WINES. If someone emails me or reaches out, call, text, whatever, do we have people to the winery sometimes? Yes. Do we have a tasting room? No, not yet. No. It's not, once we have the time and bandwidth and economics of building out those offices and making it nicer, we almost want it to look like a kind of like a WeWork, not your desk, my desk, like just free flow. And there's a lot of space and we can make it a lot nicer. Sure, would I love to have people there all the time? But it's also, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, some of those guys do have those sandwich boards out and do tastings all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's built into our lease that you're not.
It is built into the lease that you're not. I mean, some
It's an
people
insurance
do.
thing. Yeah.
I think if anyone, Tin Barn, I think they're good to go. But I think most of the other people just kind of do it. I know where I'm at, Steve would prefer if we didn't. But I've had people down there, But yeah, you don't want to hang a sign out. I don't think too much.
You've had friends over to
I've had friends over.
We've had two
taste wine, yeah.
We've had 2 pickup events, which were great.
Right.
And thankfully the space is big, so we had like 300 RSVP. We capped it once I was like, oh fuck, this got away from us a little bit, so we stopped it.
Yeah.
But the space was so big, and certainly not everyone shows up, especially because there's not we didn't.
It was also in the middle of harvest, if I recall.
It was right before
was-
harvest.
yeah.
Well, no, you're right. It was August, so normally we would have been in harvest,
Normally
but it
would
was a
have been
later
in the
year.
middle of harvest.
I felt like I was picking grapes. Maybe there was something else that I was. There was like an open house or something that you did later that I was.
We did a later one too.
Yeah, maybe
We did
that's
one
what
after
we were-
harvest.
yeah, maybe that's
We did one in November as well. And you probably were still in
I was
harvest.
probably still doing something.
We still had some things in tank. We didn't have any grapes in the building, but we still had some things finishing in tank. So that does make sense too. But so we have had a couple of events.
Yeah.
And sure, if somebody wants to come taste at the winery, like we've had a lot of industry people there, like sommeliers reach out or distributors. Of course, they come to the winery.
Absolutely.
But it's also, it's not fancy couches and chandeliers. It's a working winery. There's tanks and barrels and forklifts and
Stand around a barrel.
We stand around a barrel, or if it's nice out, we have 2 picnic tables that we sit at and. But
Watch the treasury trucks roll by.
Right.
yeah, and a lot of people love to come into the winery and see the winery, and so it is super great to.
I mean, the
have
way
people
that
by.
you have it set up, it's, it's a beautiful winery space, and you did well. It's one worth going and hanging out at.
Like I said, we got very lucky.
Yeah, totally.
So we
And
made a lot
really
of good
lucky
moves.
because you got twice as many tanks as you want, and then you ended up filling them all up anyway.
It would have hurt if we didn't have them all.
You've been fine.
Yeah, it would have hurt.
Yeah, totally. So,
Yeah, to have because
good vintage for that.
we pushed I don't remember exactly. It's something like 250 tons in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Through, and we didn't work. We also had a great team, like the intern team and our actual employees, but we didn't work past 7 p.m.
Oh, good for you guys.
And we've never had a harvest like that. When we used to share a space, everyone shows up at the same time. They're fighting for pumps and equipment and tanks and whatever. Jenny and I would show up at like 5, 6 in the morning, get a whole round of pump overs in, leave, go to Sugarloaf. We were making wine for the other people, the other friends, go vineyards, drop bins, do all the things, come back at night after they would leave, do another round. And sometimes that would backfire on us. We came back one night, and especially we didn't have glycol. We didn't have temperature control. Came back and the Gamay was like 100 degrees, which, as you know, that will kill a ferment.
Probably not a good thing for Gamay, especially.
And we can't turn the tanks down. So we, tried all these things, tried running it through like a tub and screen with water with the hoses going through, almost like a wort cooler.
Yeah.
Doesn't pull any heat out of anything.
Box or something.
Totally. So we pumped half the juice into another tank, and then we ended up filling like 3 or 4 tanks, mostly the concrete's like a quarter full, and left for the night and came back, and the temperature came down, pumped it all back together, and it finished fermenting.
That was a long
A harvest miracle.
Yeah.
It was, totally. So we've had some, not having glycol, sure, it sounds cool, but now we have a lot more.
Yeah. The only people that brag about not having glycol is because you don't have glycol.
Yeah.
Right. Or you're in a cave with, a bunch of concrete and it's naturally.
Right.
But yeah, we had one day. So a lot of things that having your own space can afford. We barreled down 90 barrels in one day this year. Never would have been able to do that in any of the other spaces. I'd look at the clock. We'd have like our 3rd white press load going in at like noon.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, we're fucking killing it. Right. And if you have to start early, you start early. But we had that same day. We the whole team barreled down 90 barrels. We bought pizza for the crew just because it was a long day. But we're still done at 7.
Yeah. It's awesome.
You're able to get an incredible amount of work done when the space is your own.
Right.
I think you can end up in the long range. You'll make better wine that way too.
Totally, because you're not pressurized.
You're not under the pressure. You're not under
all the decisions.
Physical pressure of that.
Right. You don't make bad decisions because you're pressured.
And like kind of like you guys right now, I think we were, even when we were in Healdsburg, we made most of our own stuff at the Healdsburg location, the old Rainby building. But then some of the Sophie James went to Elevation because our roommates there it was Pinot heavy, and there's only so many Pinot tanks. So the Pinot went over there, but then they also have large lots of Sauvignon Blanc and Rosé that we sent to Marietta because they have a big 10-ton bougie Europress and big white tanks. And so you're jumping between wineries trying to keep your eyes on everything and feel the tanks, smell it, taste it. Is everything like our temperature staying cool? Are they? And so you're just like maniacal going all over the place. So to push that all into one place, it's amazing. Because how many wineries are in you right now? 2 or 3?
It was 3. Although like you said, we pressed.
These years are close.
We pressed. One of them's at the top of the mountain. 2 that are close by, and 1 at the top of the mountain. But we pressed Homage Blanc at 3 Sticks this year because when the fruit came in, Stone Edge was super busy. It was that same it was the 3 weeks the end of October when everything came in all at once. When I'm probably the same time you were full.
I was going to say, we were probably almost done.
It was a Saturday, and they pressed, and they had one of those, I don't think it's a 10-ton press. I think it's like a 5 or 6.
Yeah.
They could do it all at once. So yeah, another way tag to chase, another, the whole thing.
You grease Hector with, some bottles of wine and ask if they'll press it for you.
As that's how you do everything in this business, right? Something does something.
Yep.
Something does something.
All right. Well,
wines are fucking great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just say that
delicious.
I've only had the whites up until today, but absolutely love the rest.
And I didn't even mean to open all of them, but I'm glad that we did get to and get to run through them.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll, unless you want to take them home with you, we'll taste through them all.
No. This is all for you guys.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So one more time, shout out how people can get a hold of you guys.
Send me an email, Scott@Jolie-Laide Wines, info@Jolie-Laide Wines. Go to the website. Wines are on the website, of course.
On social
there's a wine
media?
club, Jolie-Laide Wines. So, of course, social media, Jolie-Laide Wines.
Got it.
That's me. Send, DMs, slide in my DMs, all the things.
Spell it one more time for the folks.
So Jolie, Jolie, LAIDE wineswithans.com. Believe me, I do this all the time when
I feel like I'd mess up the LAIDE and the LD. I'd be putting the I before the all the time.
He's from
then-
Chicago.
Caesar
We're
salad.
from Sonoma.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us price points. Like what you're selling these for on the
we
website.
Run a gamut, but we
Yeah.
run everything from like 28 to 45-ish, $50 now. The usual math. Like if we're pulling from something like Alder Springs, you're spending $5,000 a ton. That's you're 1-to-1. That's going to be a $50 bottle of wine, $55 bottle of wine.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're extremely. So me growing up as I don't want to say poor, but not making a lot of money working in restaurants, I was afforded to be able to try a lot of wines well above my pay grade, and be exposed to a lot of wines. But that personally, so I wasn't going to the store and buying Cornas. It's like buy Côte d'Aron, and then you start like, oh, what's this Jacquard and Altesse, and what's the that's where you start getting into Gamay and Frappato and so I never wanted to make wine for expensive sake or just because people can afford it. I want anyone to be able to afford it. So even for years, the fruit kept going up and up. Farming gets harder. It gets more expensive. Labor's tough. We had a shitty president and labor laws but never once did we increase our prices. And we were about to finally, and COVID happened. And I was like, fuck, now we can't do it.
Yeah.
And so we just took it on the chin for years. So we're starting to creep them up a little bit. Yeah. But rosés and things like that, 28 to 30. Truce Gris, 30 or 32 or something. But this fruit, the first year we bought it, I think it was like $900 and nobody wanted it. This whole vineyard used to go into, again, not going to name names, used to go into somebody's Chardonnay.
I've heard that story.
Cheap white filler.
Yeah.
And we now take the lion's share of the vineyard. These last 3 years, we got 20 to 25 tons. But the fruit kept getting more and more expensive. We're now in like the $3,000 or $3,200 a ton.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
It's sort of that theory about a restaurant that goes into a bad neighborhood and all of a sudden the neighborhood starts getting better and then the restaurant gets priced out of the neighborhood and has to leave.
Yep.
And can't take that $900 fruit and make it cool and all of a sudden it's like, fuck it, $3,000 a ton. How did that happen?
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah.
But yeah, like straws, 45, 48, $50, like that range. And again, some of that translates. Like we were next door to Costa Brown forever. So we have a lot of relationships where whether it's Costa Brown or Dumont or whomever it is, we buy their used barrels. They pay, $1,000 or $1,200, use them twice. And then we buy them for 50 or 100. Yeah. Their wines are expensive. Ours, we use old barrels.
Yep.
We don't add any shit to it. It's just, people ask me like, what does natural wine mean? And it's like, everyone wanted to learn how to make bread during COVID. And it's like, how many ingredients are in that?
Yeah.
2, some yeast and some flour, a little bit of water.
Yeah, if you count the water.
If you count the water.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but there's also Wonder Bread, and that's the same thing. We step on some grapes and dump it into a tank. That's it. Don't inoculate, don't add anything, whatever. Or there's wines, if they actually had to list all the ingredients, they'd probably have 50 to 75 things.
Riboflavin. What's riboflavin?
I don't know what any of that shit is.
Wonder Bread.
Yeah, you want to look at the ingredient list on everything.
Yeah.
Well, soon you will be on your wine bottles.
I know, it's coming.
It's coming. All right. Awesome. Well, Scott, thank you very
Wines
much.
are fucking great, man. Thank you so much for
awesome.
For coming and sharing the whole the whole little lineup that we have here in front of us. Because like I said, I've only had the whites, and I've really because I'm as a daily wine drinker, you appreciate people that make wine that you can actually drink it every day and not have to get in trouble with your wife.
I would say that we're lucky, and obviously there's a team. So like between Jenny, Bailey, Schaefer, all of us together, we're able to pull all this off. But also, when you work for yourself, you get to you can do whatever the fuck you want. So these are the wines that I wanted to make, even when I lived in Napa and I wanted to go this direction. People were like, "What are you doing?" And thankfully, other people have been intrigued or followed along, because otherwise I'd be screwed, obviously. But but now we're making
Cabernet Napa.
Exactly, and driving a much nicer car. Trust me. But we get to we're making 8,000 cases of obscure varieties, and people are even during COVID. Like we did so well because the wines were inexpensive. People stopped buying expensive wines, and we're super popular because we like being in restaurants. We get introduced to, and retail shops. We get introduced to so many people. But thinking about people experiencing these wines, wherever that, whether at French Laundry or at 11 Madison Park or Blue Hill, whatever it is, we get so many emails like, we had the sommelier recommended your wine. And it's like amazing.
That's beautiful. It really is. That's
And then
the way it
come
should
back
work,
when
yeah.
when the sparkling wine's ready.
Sparkling Alagute. Let's go.
And come back when you find some of that claret too. Is that what you're saying?
Don't come back without.
No, come to the winery. We'll find a bottle of that.
Okay, cool. No, I'd love to try it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely, Scott. Thanks for coming on. Much appreciated.
Cheers.
And thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Drink more Trousseau Gris.
Any.